What we are witnessing right now is nothing less than a shocking and unprecedented challenge to American power. China has issued a direct warning to the United States over Venezuela, and the implications are game-changing. This is not a symbolic move. It is a breaking development that could redefine the balance of power in Latin America, in global energy politics, and in the very architecture of international relations. When Beijing tells Washington to back off from Venezuela, it signals a new phase in global power competition. For over a century, the United States has treated Latin America as its exclusive sphere of influence. The Monroe Doctrine, invoked since the 19th century, warned rival powers to stay away from the Western Hemisphere. And for decades, Washington enforced it with sanctions, coups, and military interventions. But today, China is openly challenging that doctrine, and the shockwaves will be felt worldwide. Think about how rare this moment is. When was the last time a global rival directly warned Washington in its own backyard? And when was the last time that rival had the confidence, the leverage, and the economic firepower to back it up? That is why this breaking story matters. It is not just about Venezuela. It is about the global shift toward a multipolar world order, where the United States no longer calls all the shots. China has spent years building its influence in Venezuela. Billions of dollars have flowed from Beijing into Caracas, funding oil projects, highways, housing, and ports. While Washington used sanctions and threats to squeeze Venezuela, China offered loans, trade deals, and infrastructure. In other words, when the United States brought punishment, Beijing brought opportunity. And that is why Venezuela listens when China speaks. Venezuela is not just another country. It holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. Whoever controls access to this energy treasure controls one of the most valuable assets in global politics. For much of the 20th century, Venezuela was a loyal supplier to the United States. But when Venezuela sought independence from Washington's dictates, the relationship soured. Successive American administrations responded with economic warfare, backing opposition leaders, and even supporting attempts to topple governments. Yet while the United States was tightening its grip, China was extending a hand. Beijing became a crucial partner, guaranteeing markets for Venezuelan oil and offering lifelines when Washington tried to choke the economy. That partnership is not just about money. It is about survival. When Beijing warns the United States not to interfere, it is defending billions invested in Venezuela's energy sector and its strategic role in securing China's future oil supply. This confrontation is shocking for policymakers in Washington. For decades, they assumed Venezuela could not survive without American approval. But today, Caracas draws strength from Beijing and Moscow. The United States no longer has the last word in Latin America. That reality is what makes China's warning unprecedented. It shows that the tectonic plates of global politics are shifting before our eyes. The methods of influence also reveal the deeper story. Washington relies on sanctions, threats, and military presence. Beijing relies on loans, infrastructure, and trade. For many nations, China's approach is more appealing. Why endure constant punishment from Washington when Beijing offers investment and markets? This contrast reshapes calculations not only in Venezuela, but across Latin America. Leaders from Argentina to Brazil, from Ecuador to Bolivia, are watching closely. They see that Venezuela, despite crushing U.S. sanctions, has not collapsed. They see that China and Russia provide alternatives once thought impossible. And they are asking, if Venezuela can resist Washington with new alliances, why not us? That question itself marks the erosion of uncontested U.S. dominance. Sanctions, once devastating, no longer guarantee compliance. Nations under siege now find escape routes through Chinese banks, Russian support, and non-Western networks. Military threats carry less credibility in a world scarred by Iraq and Afghanistan. Even institutions like the IMF and World Bank, once pillars of U.S. influence, face competition from Chinese development funds. Washington's tools of power are still sharp, but they are no longer unmatched. This erosion of influence is both external and internal. The United States faces deep domestic challenges: economic inequality, polarized politics, crumbling infrastructure. At the same time, China projects the image of a rising power, building high-speed rail, investing in technology, and expanding global markets. For Latin American leaders, the choice seems increasingly clear. Why tie their futures to a divided America when China offers stability and investment? Venezuela's story is now a symbol of this transformation. When the U.S. declared Nicolás Maduro illegitimate and recognized an opposition leader instead, it expected the world to fall in line. Yet Maduro survived, strengthened by Chinese and Russian backing. That survival was not just a political victory, it was proof that Washington no longer has the decisive influence it once did. Perception matters as much as power, and the perception spreading across Latin America is that America is weaker, China is stronger, and alternatives exist. Every loan, every oil shipment, every act of defiance reinforces this perception, and perceptions, once embedded, become reality. This is why the confrontation over Venezuela is not just about one country. It is a rehearsal for a much larger play. If China can openly warn the United States in Latin America, it can do so in Africa, in Asia, even in parts of Europe where it has invested heavily. The rules of the game are changing. Multipolarity is no longer a theory. It is the lived reality of global politics. For Washington, this is deeply unsettling. For nations like Venezuela, it is liberating. Multipolarity means that resistance has backup. In the past, defying Washington meant isolation and collapse. Today it means new partners, new opportunities, and new room to maneuver. The stakes could not be higher. If Venezuelan oil flows increasingly toward China, Washington loses one of its strongest tools of influence: control over energy flows. For generations, American power was tied to energy dominance. But if China secures Venezuela's reserves, that dominance erodes. The world has seen this before. Britain once commanded global energy until the United States replaced it. Now, China is positioning itself for the same role in the 21st century. This shift is not just economic, it is psychological. For decades, Latin American leaders believed defying the United States was political suicide. Today, they see Venezuela endure, they see China defend, and they sense freedom. That psychological shift may be the most dangerous development for Washington, because once fear disappears, control collapses. And make no mistake, control is collapsing. The United States still has influence, but it is no longer absolute. The image of Washington as the uncontested superpower is fading. Every act of resistance accelerates the cycle. Once one nation resists successfully, others follow. That is how empires decline. Not overnight, but wave by wave, erosion by erosion. The next chapter of this story will determine how far that erosion goes. Will Washington double down on sanctions, risking proof of their limits? Will it attempt new military threats despite global skepticism? Or will it adapt, acknowledging that the era of unipolar dominance is over? All eyes are now on Washington's response, because the stakes extend far beyond Caracas. This is not just Venezuela's fight. It is the front line of global energy politics, the test case for multipolarity, and the symbol of America's declining grip. The next 48 hours, the next months, and the next decisions could reshape the future of international relations for decades. If you've stayed with me until now, you understand the gravity of this breaking story. It is not noise. It is the very definition of a turning point. So stay tuned, because we will continue to cut through the headlines and bring you the deeper truth. If you found this analysis valuable, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. This story is not going away, and neither are we. Stay with us for exclusive updates on the Venezuela crisis, the U.S.-China rivalry, and the shocking shifts shaping our world.